the Khost bombing.
'09, December.
Yep.
Yep, another good book, The Triple Agent. Awesome read to know how Balawi did what he did that day.
Let's talk about what happened.
Yeah, so I got there probably 3 weeks maybe before that happened, beginning of December. I was going to show up, be the country team lead guy, and I was going to go around the bases. I ended up staying in Kabul and working in Kabul. And I was getting feedback on things that are happening out there. Hey, we're spinning up for high threat meat and all this other stuff. Can you look up this person? Can you look up this stuff? See if you got any information on it. We couldn't get any information on it. So there's a lot of things there that were close hold, compartmented for a reason that they wanted to keep it close hold, right? Compartmented. So our guys weren't getting information. A lot of physical things about lack of information. The physical security building there was a facility that was an existing facility. They made it a SCIF, right? Limited access or limited like computer space. There were people actually hot seating at the same computer station because there wasn't enough space. There weren't enough drops. So there's lack of communication, lack of information for those reasons. Compartmentalization and then physical access to a computer to ask questions. And then there was the withholding of information from the management team to in order to put a plan together, in order to plan appropriately. And then there's a reluctancy to listen to that, the guidance that our guys were giving out there. And there was two or three team leaders on the staff side that have gone through there and worked that problem set and were unable to convey to them, this is the best way to do this. Because it ended up to be mostly focused towards, may have been the pressures from outside of that base to get something done, or whatever it was, which also shouldn't be a consideration. Sure, okay, I feel pressure to get something done, but the fear of failing, right? That's the whole thing. I got to get something done, or I'm going to be perceived as a failure. Well. Or you can be alive to tell the story that you failed, right?
Yeah.
All these indicators, I mean, the triple agent paints a good picture. So we'll never ever see the official report on it. They took a lot of internal, over several years, like what did we think happened internally? What did we do wrong? What could we do right? What could we have done better, right? A lot of unwillingness initially to actually identify the leadership problems that were going on, the communication problems that were going on, the disclosure of information, right? Enough for our security teams that were out there to have a decent plan or to even be listened to. But it was crazy during those times. So what I'm finding out, my first days underground, each base has different criteria for searching people. There's color codes, there's number codes, and you probably remember some of those. There's gold and yellow and green green means you do this to this person. Red means full on strip down, give them new clothes, and different levels of searches. That was one of the things on my list of things to do. It's like no. Let's get this shit together and figure out a way to not individual bases, but I thought that needed to be consistent throughout the theater. Because we were the ones doing the searching. So I go to one base, I got this whole another criteria for searching people. I go to another base, and I got another search criteria, and they're all bad guys. So what's the level of bad guy, right? What is this guy? What's his deal? And then you get fed the information that they want you to know about this guy to get a minimal search criteria on this dude. He gets painted with, a minimal search, and okay, that's all I know. I don't know any different. I don't have any information to go on. That all changed after that. So there's now somebody to reach out to find out exactly the threat level and those kind of things. But leading up to that, there was a reluctancy to listen to the GRS guys on the ground and how it needed to go down. There were some other folks and even It might have been in Darren Labonte is one of the guys that died in that one. He's coming from Jordan. It might have been in Triple Agent or some other book or article where he's actually expressing some reluctancy to do this because it just seems like we're not in control of this guy. He's controlling the op tempo. He's making the meetings. He's canceling meetings, which is what happened that day too. He's coming up with excuses, and somehow he magically has this access that we're just all salivating over. How does that happen? Well, he has actually described some of the reluctancy to do this based off of his spidey senses going off on this guy. He's like, hey, that's too much access too quickly for this guy. Why would that happen? How would that happen? And so he's one that says something in some documents, like it's public knowledge. And I'm thinking it's probably Triple Agent. A great book to read on how this whole thing goes down from a third-party perspective. So there's no favoritism either way. It's what he did and how he was able to do it.
Do you want to talk about actually what happened in Khost? How it happened? Who died?
Well, he goes, Southside is the team leader for GRS down there. I'm talking to him for a couple days, a week or two before that, and he's frustrated he wants to go meet this guy down in town or outside of town somewhere, search him off base, so they're the only ones exposed to a potential threat. That gets denied, and at one point I'm on the phone with him, and I say, well, you can deny our services if he's so safe that they don't need your services. You can say, okay, we're out. Hey, take care of it, Chief. Have a good one. We'll be in the team room playing, Xbox or something, whatever. I actually said that, and he actually pulled out. He's like, well, if you don't need us and you're not taking my advice on anything, then all right, well, have a good meeting. We'll be over here if you need us. Almost last minute, I don't know, at one point he decided that. He calls me, and he's calling me because he can't get on the system. He's hot seating on a workstation. He said he was out, and then he calls me. He's like, we're back in. He was like, we're going to do what we can at the site when he shows up, because that's all we're given. And he didn't feel good about just standing around not doing anything. So he's like, we're going to set up outside so everybody wasn't supposed to be outside there. It was just supposed to be the GRS team to meet him. Darren and the Jordanian officer were supposed to be there. And that's it, just to meet and greet. And then he meets everybody when he goes inside the room that was set up for the meeting. That was a last minute thing there. Everybody comes out to form a greeting line. And unfortunately, that gets a lot of people killed that wouldn't have otherwise been dead today. Those are all decisions not made by GRS, but it was all made last minute by the station management. But Southside calls me and he says, we're back in. We're going to do what we can. We got something worked out in the front of the building to make this happen. And we'll do what we can. And we're going to take, we're going to be the ones exposed, which is what we do, right? And if all went well and it still went bad, there would be, a few less dead people today. Subject to anybody else's assessment of what happened. That's what I know, and that's what I think would have happened otherwise. Our guys would have still been dead, because that's the job that they had to do, and he was going to Balawi was going to blow himself up. That's what he went there to do. And then Darren and the Jordanian intel officer would have been dead as well. But there would have been at least 3 others still alive. He says he's going back in. He's got a plan. They're going to do what they can because that's what they're there for. And the plan was for all the folks to wait on the inside and meet him when he came inside. The meet and greet was going to happen with Darren Labonte and the Jordanian officer, intel officer. 3 GRS guys out there to meet and greet, do the whole pat down and search, and then off to the meeting they go. Well, last minute, the local guard force. The concern was the rapport and the identification from the local guard force of Balawi coming in, right? So the local guard force was either told to look away or they were taken off of the gates to come in. And only Americans were going to be there. But the Americans, they were going to be compliant. There was this little card they showed. The driver had either I'm under duress or I'm okay, right? You flip the card one way or the other. He's okay was shown. Either way, the gates were up and free access to come in base. No searches. That was another spot where the static guys wanted to at least do a search. And I had described to Southside at the time too. I was like, well, if you're out at the perimeter of the fence where they're coming in at the gate and you do the search, I've done it myself on other occasions too, but so I wasn't telling them anything that I wouldn't do if I was there doing the thing myself. Take the ash chewing later, because they're going to complain about it later, right? If they go into the meeting, hey, you guys searched me, roughed me up. You said that wasn't going to happen. Hey, put it on me. It's all on me, right? My bad, sorry. But they weren't allowed to do that. They were very strictly observed, controlled about how the things were going to go down. And eventually, they decided to do what the best thing they have, with this shit sandwich, We'll meet him when he comes to in front of the facility, search him there, and then escort him inside, and then get on with the meeting. Unbeknownst to them, there's like, let's go out and form this meet and greet line. Unfortunately, she's not here live to defend herself in that decision, but that was a decision made by station management to go do that. Ended up killing more people, including herself. Our guys died probably instantly because they were ground zero of the explosion, along with Darren Labonte and the Jordanian intel officer. He went there with the intent to kill Americans. That was his whole intent. And to think that, when you think in that mindset, the premise of the whole thing to alleviate all the security measures for rapport, to maintain rapport, that's not a good reason to do that for security, right? Especially when we're talking Afghanistan.
Yeah.
We're talking Afghanistan 2009. And all the red flags are up all throughout this whole thing, including up to that meeting where he says he's injured. He provides his story along the way. He builds a story that he was in a moped accident or whatever. He's got a hurt leg, so he's going to be he has a cane now. He's walking with a cane. He shows up and he works his whole cover story the whole way through. His whole intent, now that we know after the fact, right? We know after the fact now that he had a video that was his intent the whole time, right? But the stuff that we were doing over there, you have to assume, otherwise. You have to assume that that's their intent to begin with. And then not from a paranoid, not from a fear standpoint, not from a overly protective standpoint, but it's the reality of the environment at the time. How he's getting there, who he is, the access that he has, even if it's even if he's been forced to do it, even if he's being forced to wear a body vest and to gain access, and somebody else is going to be around to initiate when he gets close to Americans. So these are all of the things that all the guys that I know that were there planning that mission, the 3 staffers that were there, they were thinking all these things. Well, what if he's unwitting, or not unwitting, but what if he's being coerced to do this so he can wear a body vest so somebody else can clack it off on him, right, when he gets close to America? What if? We don't know. Who knows this guy that well? But that was going on across the board in Afghanistan at the time at all of our bases, where there's different search criteria, and it was just a mess of search criteria and what to do, how to do it. This was a new one. This is another one. And I, for whatever reasons, get rid of all the security measures. When you think about it now, for us in the business, it's like to get rid of all security measures. Given the situation, the circumstances, time and place, to maintain or build rapport for a person who's been manipulating you and canceling, not acting right, come up with excuse after excuse to not meet you, then I'm going to meet you, then cancel, and then all these other things. He'll send you a video, sends a video for you to chomp on really quick, salivate over, and all these flags, all these red flags going off, and disregarding all those things, get rid of all the security measures, doesn't make sense to anybody.
Yeah.
At the time or after the fact, before or after, before, during, it doesn't make any sense at all. He gets out of the car, decides, all right, this is as close. He sees a whole bunch of people standing there, and perfect for him that for him, everything aligns for him to do his job. And that's what he went there to do, get as many Americans as possible. Our guys, see that there's something going on. Pretty sure it was Scott yelling at the guy to get his hands out, showing me his hands and all this other stuff. Dan and Jeremy are with him, pulling cover. Wyatt, the fourth guy, he's standing by the welcoming party. He's back there by the door of the building. So he survives the day because of his location. He wasn't, he gets injured, but he doesn't die. He's alive to tell the story because of where he was. But yeah, that it was just, yeah. And I the things that I was hearing across the board, not just in Khost, but across the board, how we were supporting operations. In my mind, I'm writing these things as a new guy. I got to address these things with all the team leaders and all the teams in Afghanistan, that we need to get this under control. And I'm conversing with headquarters that this is what I'm going to do. This is what I see. This is what I want to do. Just so you know, this is my things I want to take care of. That was one of them, was the search criteria there. And Scott, it was a first-time staff deployment, but he was a contractor before that. So the whole game wasn't new to him. He'd been caught before that. None of this was new to him. He knew exactly what to do, how it should go down, was not listened to, didn't have, for some reason, station management there just didn't want to listen and do what they needed to do. And unfortunately, they're not around to answer the mail for that anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, things go bad, sideways. I was in Kabul when I heard the radio call. So I'm talking to another former unit guy. He's working the FOB's office, the Forward Operating Base office, and that's where the radios and the monitors are and all that stuff for all their stations and predator feeds and all that stuff. And we're just having a conversation. I'm walking back to the security office, and he comes down the hallway to get me, gets air ops, gets all these folks, all the chiefs that were on at the headquarters there. And he says, there's been an explosion on Khost. We're not sure who's injured, if there's any injuries or what the injuries are. Initial statements, right? They're never accurate. These are the names that we hear. And he's rattling off a bunch of names. So how is everybody, in my mind, how is that many people around an incident like that? I thought initially it was an accident of some sort, because how is everybody from the senior person there all the way down to our guys, how are they all in the same place at the same time?
Yeah.
So as I'm trying to digest what's happening, and as the medevac is happening out there and they're getting shipped to Salerno, to the cache there, they're starting to confirm KIAs and wounded in action and who's who. And so at that time, Sachs, I'm talking to Sachs about, hey, get three guys or four guys, however many I said. I need 4 guys to fly with me to Khost. Like now, pack a bag. We got to fly immediately. And that's what I was talking about. My communication skills at the time. I don't think I told him why we needed to do that. I just needed 4 guys to fly with me to Khost because something happened in Khost. I don't remember exactly what I said. I don't think I gave him the story of what happened. But when I find out, who's dead or dying out there, there's all 4 of our guys that are out there on this list, dead or dying. So then instead of a QRF, because I don't know exactly where it's happening, I'm not familiar with the coast area yet, and I didn't know it was on base. So anything they said, I'm thinking it happened out in town somewhere, because GRS has evolved, so we're usually out of the wire, downtown somewhere. I hadn't been to Coast yet, and I had to get some guys that had been to Coast and familiar with Coast to get there and to go with me. And then it just became by the time I get there, that's the first time I find out who's dead and who's wounded.
How long after the incident did it take for you to get down there?
It was probably 4 hours.
That's it?
Yep. A lot of things were going bad then at the time, overall in the theater. Some aircraft, fixed wing or rotary wing, were socked into weather. Some were not working or waiting on engine parts. And there wasn't,
Shit.
just a shitstorm of things that collided together in that one moment to get a response team there. So it became, after I found out, that the whole team had been wiped out, and it wasn't a QRF thing anymore. It was a recovery thing. So EOD guys went out there to do their part on the scene. Army EOD was already on the site to do the EOD stuff. And by the time I got there, the sun had dropped. It's dark. Everybody that had to be evacuated was evacuated. Some guys were headed to Bagram at that time already, the living injured. And then off to Landstuhl after that. But most of the folks were either dead or confirmed dead, or they're on their way to get help, either in Bagram or Landstuhl. And then it was literally just
Cleaning up
the mess, yeah, literally. So the 3 guys that flew out there with me, I apologize to them because I don't know what information I told them about flying down there with me, what we were doing, and what had happened. I told them when we got to the airport, waiting for the plane there, that this is what happened, and this is why we're going, and I appreciate you guys stepping up to fly out last minute with me to this thing and all that kind of crap. Yeah, we got there, and then it was about, accountability of the folks that were there, accountability for their stuff, making sure their stuff was taken care of, all their personal belongings and all that kind of stuff. Sensitive items, all that stuff. Then it became a mission of going to grab the guy that facilitated the crossing. So the only guys that were left were the paramilitary guys to do anything like that. So between me and the other GRS guy that was there, we were helping them plan to go talk to this guy, find him, go talk to him, see what he knew, when he knew, and all that kind of stuff. See if he was culpable on any of this stuff, or he was just a facilitator, just like he did what he was told. That's all he did. So that was what that became. So work with the locals that were out there, paramilitary guys with their locals, to go get this guy. And then question him about what had happened during that whole incident. But yeah, that was not something easily to handle at the time. I mean, that was the most horrific sight I've seen in my life to that point, and I think since then. But again, I mean, our guys did exactly what they were supposed to do. So even if they did that at the gate, further away, or in town, our guys would have still been dead. But that's what we were there for, to minimize the damage to everybody else, to others. As a protective agent, I'm taking the hit for you. And they weren't allowed to do that. Unfortunately, they were killed, and then others were killed in the process or wounded. So unfortunately, lessons learned were learned and taken forward with protocols that alleviated this or that incident from happening again, or at least mitigated to a certain extent that it wouldn't happen to that extent. I don't want to say control, but more listening, more confidence in your security element there, the GRS guys, to listen to what they have to say, and actually more training on the GRS side to convey to them, maybe this isn't such a good idea. How about we do this, right?
Yeah.
And give solutions. So it was a two-way street. I wasn't too happy with the initial story that came out. I finished that trip and went back right before the memorial that they had at headquarters. And I heard the story that was happening, and they were saying it was all security's fault. I mean, it was horrible. And that's what they're telling the fan. I was upset. Eventually, they actually have an honest assessment on what happened, how it happened, and how we can mitigate this from happening again. But initially, I was extremely upset about the story that was being told. And because I know what the extent of what 3 officers were down there, 3 staffers were doing to try to accomplish that mission for that team. Frustration on their parts leading up to that point, and a lot of anger afterwards after I heard the initial story. A lot of guys wanted to quit at that point. I didn't. I felt obligated to stay and try to straighten the record on what happened and how our part can be better, right? How can we do better? Even if you meet that kind of resistance, or nobody's listening to you, how do you get them to listen to you? That kind of thing, right? That was horrible. That was my 3rd week in a year to come of that. Bad times in general, 09 to 10. That was the high times of so on all the bases that were being hit out there, we had GRS guys assigned to them all. Khost was getting hit a lot. That's the other thing about this whole story at Khost. They were getting hit a lot. V-bits at the gates. They were getting hit. It was like normal to hear that Khost V-bit at the gate. Oh, really? Imagine that. J-Bad was getting hit. All the bases were getting V-bitted at the gates. And it's at the gates. Good. That's what the gates are out there for, right? They're built to withstand those kind of things. And we're going to lose some folks. Locals, probably too. But that's the job of those folks doing the searches. Unfortunately, yeah. So to put that in context, that wasn't the only thing happening on Khost. It was very normal to hear that they got V-bitted again at another gate. So it wasn't that was the environment they were in. So to think that you're going to alleviate all the security for anything that was going on there at the time is craziness.
Yeah.
And I'm not just saying that now and after the fact that, it happened and I know more about why it happened. But it's one of those things that never should have happened. And why did that happen? Communication, leadership, failure of leadership at several levels. One, to put that kind of pressure on somebody that hasn't been familiar with that kind of environment, right?
Yeah.
And one, leadership at that level out in the base to not listen to the professionals that are there to help you do your job. It was seen as a hindrance. That was another thing that changed. So one of the folks that was there was also, again, one of the chiefs later on at another site I went to had a totally different mindset on what he thought his GRS leadership was saying to him. He listened to every word that GRS said, and it's like, and we had those honest conversations. Let me have a conversation with you about how you want to support this mission, which is exactly what needed to happen.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it took that for a lot of people to wake up.
Yeah.
And get things straight. And unfortunately, I was there, or unfortunately, I was there to, help in that regard, which I feel pretty good about what had happened after the fact. And it wasn't there to say, because I was saying it to our management back at headquarters. I was like, this is what I see happening. This is how I want to correct it. And they said, well, what's wrong with the way it's happening? I said, well, that's how people get killed. And I became that guy, like the Chicken Little, right?
Yeah.
I was like, well, do you know what's happening out here? This is the most active that our bases are getting hit in since we've been here to this date. It's the highest organization. It was its highest highest number of people in a war zone like that since the Vietnam War, right? And it was the most active for bases being hit. And we specifically had GRS in all the bases that were getting hit. So, we need to do things differently. And they said, okay, well, over your year, yeah, they were, had like a kind of a lackadaisical kind of, okay, if that's what you want to do, no, do what you got to do. And then unfortunately, this happened. So that was not the time for me to say, I told you so. But it was an I told you so moment. And it was happening on every base. The protocols and the lack of communication between the security elements, us, our guys, and then the station management on exactly how to do things. So we had those guys, hey, we got to do these things strictly this way. And then, so that doesn't sit well with somebody who wants to get shit done another way. And that conversation, communication, leadership, all the way across the board. Yeah, I have that in notes to this day. Those are the things that happen. Lack of leadership and communication. Leadership being, as a leader, listening to who you're leading, and then as a follower, listening to your leader and giving honest feedback and having that kind of dialogue. Because ultimately, you have the same goal, mission success, right? You're on the same mission. You're trying to do the same thing. And how do you get there? Have that discussion on how do you get there, in our case, how do you get there safely?
Hey everybody, I'm Shawn Ryan. Click here to subscribe to the Shawn Ryan Show YouTube channel for the hottest and most compelling interviews that you will not see anywhere else. I've also made a playlist of all the previous SRS episodes so they're easy to find. You can find that right here.